All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story, let's start out with a powerlifting story. This is Nick Strength and Power after all. Taylor Atwood. We spoke about Taylor a couple news videos ago. He just finished a powerlifting meet this past weekend with a crazy 1,790-pound total at just 162.4 pounds body weight. And at that meet, he had a very impressive 320 kg deadlift, which is 705 pounds, again, at 162 pounds body weight. But recently, after that meet, he uploaded another deadlift that was even more impressive. These are insane numbers that this kid is putting up. 770 pounds, 349.2 kgs. He was 162 pounds body weight doing this deadlift. Absolutely insane. A 65-pound PR just 4 days after that meet this weekend. And to put that into perspective, you've got guys like Half Thor doing 501 kgs. Thor was weighing upwards of 450 pounds when he did that 501. So this guy, at 300 pounds body weight lighter than Thor, is deadlifting 350 kilograms, essentially. This is an extremely impressive deadlift. And again, to put it into perspective, as far as his body weight to weight ratio is concerned here, this is almost a 5 times body weight deadlift, 4.75 times 162 is 770 pounds. It's crazy. So I wanted to give Taylor a shout out in the beginning of this video because this is the coolest powerlifting story I've seen this week so far. So shout out to Taylor Atwood, killing it with these deadlifts and killing it in general, because at that meet he had some crazy numbers in the bench press and squat as well. Again, a 1790 total. Now, next up in the news, speaking of heavy deadlifts, James Hollingshead, who just won the 2020 Europa Pro, qualifying him for the 2020 Mr. Olympia. He has a video, his videographer actually, who is a great videographer, by the way. Shout out to Fit Visuals for sending me this clip. He's deadlifting pretty heavy, and he's actually 2 weeks out from a show. James is not done. I originally thought that James was taking time off between the Europa and the Olympia because, of course, he is already qualified for the Olympia, but he's also going to be competing in the British Grand Prix just 2 weeks from now. So you've got Regan, who just competed at the Europa, who is competing in 3 weeks at the Romania show, and James, who just won the Europa, is going that extra mile and competing again in 2 weeks prior to the Olympia. So whereas most bodybuilders would just shut it down and focus on their Olympia prep, James and Regan both, Regan is qualified on points and James is qualified off that victory. They're already going to the Olympia, but they're going to keep competing this year, and I think that's really respectable. And I think James has a good shot at winning this British Grand Prix. I don't know who else is going to be in that lineup, but I couldn't imagine it's going to be that deep, again, considering the fact that the Olympia qualification deadline for 2020 is already passed. So unless people are trying to qualify for next year, like James is, I believe this is an Olympia qualifier for next year. I know that the show that Regan is doing in Romania is a qualifier for the 2021 Mr. Olympia. I'm assuming this one is as well. So James and Regan both are looking to pull off a double Olympia qualification in the span of about a month, which I think would be very impressive, qualifying for 2 Olympias within a month's time. So best of luck to James. I certainly think he's got to be dangerous on paper in that lineup. Again, I don't know who else is going to be in it, but we're going to be seeing James compete again in 2 weeks and Regan compete in 3. So the bodybuilding season is not quite over just because the Olympia qualification season is over. We're going to still see some more shows prior to the Olympia in December, so stay tuned for that. Now, next up in the news, a Patrick Moore physique update. He's preparing for 2021. He's done for the rest of the year as far as bodybuilding is concerned. He's taking about a year hiatus to put on some size for his next go-around. He believes that he needs to get bigger in order to be more competitive with the big guys in the men's open ranks. And even though it's a little over, maybe it's about 2 months since we saw him on stage, he does look like he's already putting on some size, and he's focusing again on growing during this time off. And he is taking a full year off, which I'm assuming means he's going to be skipping next year's Mr. Olympia as well. But I'm really excited to see what Patrick is able to put together next year. As far as combining the aesthetic look of his physique, the small waist that he's got, any men's open bodybuilder that can hit a vacuum pose during their posing routine is a good poser as far as I'm concerned, and Patrick is one of those guys that can do that. So I'm curious to see what he looks like when he puts on this size, and hopefully he doesn't sacrifice that small waist and those lines in the pursuit of size, but I think Patrick is going to put together something really impressive when we see him next year, whenever he decides to compete again. Now, next up in the news, Big Ramy. So Big Ramy put up this post on Instagram basically thanking Dan Solomon for the special invite. This is a picture of him and Dan. Dan is the head honcho at the Olympia. And I just thought it was a good reminder that the reason why last year Big Ramy did not compete at the Olympia supposedly was a shoulder injury. So he says, sadly, last year after my shoulder injury, I had to watch Mr. Olympia from public seats. But the nice part of the story is I finally met Mr. Dan Solomon, and what a great man he is within and outside his work. I witnessed firsthand with Dan Solomon as the head of the Olympia weekend and Tamer Al-Gundy, the family, the production, and what an amazing show it was. So I can't wait to be back on stage and be part of the greatest bodybuilding show in the world, coming back in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip thanks to the recent acquisition of the event of Mr. Olympia by Jake Wood. So I thought this was a noteworthy post for a number of reasons. I think, the conspiracy that I keep seeing about Big Ramy potentially faking the positive test for the virus that he had, it just seems more and more ridiculous to me as I see more posts from Big Ramy about how excited he is to get to the Olympia. And the question to me really just is, who does anyone really believe that Big Ramy didn't want to go to the Olympia? Because that would be his only incentive for faking that positive test. Why would he want to miss his qualifying opportunity to go to the Olympia? I mean, the fact that Europa, Spain, the top 3 spots at that show got to go to the Olympia is the most incentive in the world for Ramy to go. I mean, people saying that Ramy would have won the show, maybe that is a little bit disrespectful to the bodybuilders that competed there. But again, top 3 got an invite to the Olympia. And to think that Big Ramy wouldn't have placed top 3 there is a bit of a stretch. I mean, so I just don't really buy into that theory that if Big Ramy, thought he was not looking good or thought he was off or whatever and wanted to get out of the competition so he faked a positive test. I just don't, that's just not in the realm of believability to me, and I think it's a complete fabrication, to be honest. He really has no incentive to do that. And I think even if he came in off to that Europa show, you would still have a hard time making an argument that he wouldn't be in the top 3. Now, next up in the news, speaking of testing positive, Rafael Brandao recently tested positive for the virus. He made an announcement on his Instagram story saying that he did, in fact, have it. So maybe that puts his ability to compete at the Olympia in question. Now, obviously, Rafael did compete at that Europa Spain show, and he placed in the top 3. A lot of people had him higher than 3rd, but he did place top 3 there, qualifying him for the 2020 Mr. Olympia. Now, who knows? It's not really clear how sick or what his symptoms are specifically, but we're getting closer and closer to the Olympia now. I'm assuming he's going to be fine by the Olympia, but whether that impacts his training or his plans as far as the Olympia are concerned, who knows? But Rafael Brandao did just test positive as well. Now, the final story that I have for you guys today, Chris Bumstead and Logan Franklin squash the beef. So Chris Bumstead commented a recent update from Logan Franklin with the opposite of what Logan commented on his post. Chris Bumstead says, pretty crazy improvements from last year's Classic Physique debut. A positive comment in response to Logan Franklin's exact opposite comment on Chris Bumstead's post, basically saying that Bumstead looked the same in his physique update with no improvements from the last year. So maybe they did squash the beef. Maybe they are just having a friendly competitive rivalry and it's all fun and games. So don't take it too serious. That's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Please subscribe to this channel if you have not subscribed already. We are now 19,000 subscribers away from 1 million subscribers. So please hit that subscribe button. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And as always, Nick Strength and Power signing out.